Hello, I'm Commissioner Thomas Hicks with the United States Election Assistance Commission. Today, we will be continuing our series of interviews on an important and concerning topic, the security of election officials, staff members, and poll workers. I'm joined by Tina Barton, who currently works for the EAC as a senior program advisor to the executive director. Prior to joining the EAC, Tina worked for 15 years administrating elections in Michigan. Most recently, Tina served as a city clerk for the City of Rochester Hills, Michigan. Thank you for speaking with me today. And let's jump right into this. Can you please share a little about your background and how you got your start in elections, Tina?
Well, thank you, Commissioner Hicks. It's an honor to be with you today. I actually have been working in government for 31 years and started working at Oakland County in Michigan as a production control analyst, and then moved from there to Bloomfield Township, where I held several positions working as a level 1 assessor. I worked as the treasurer's assistant. I was an ordinance officer. And during that time when I was an ordinance officer, we had a new township clerk that was elected, and she appointed me to be her deputy clerk. And that was kind of my initiation into the whole elections atmosphere. And I worked there as the deputy clerk for 8 years. And then I went to Rochester Hills, where I was appointed as the city clerk and served as their city clerk for 8 years. So have worked many levels of government as well as many different positions in government, but found that elections were my true love. And so when I found that, I stuck with that, and I'm still with that because that's where my passion's at.
Great. Since the 2020 elections, reports of threats and harassment of election officials have increased around the country. You actually received threats related to the 2020 presidential election. Can you tell us and describe how your office and staff dealt with that behavior?
Yeah, so for me, the threats came in after the election had taken place. So about a week after the election, I started getting death threats at that time and received a few of them. And obviously the very first step that we took was to alert our sheriff's office, because the sheriff's office in Oakland County actually serves as the police agency for Rochester Hills. So the first call was to the sheriff's office to let them know that I had started receiving death threats on my voicemail, as well as my personal social media, and reached out to them. And then after that, I really felt that it was important that even though those threats were coming in and targeting me specifically, I understood the fact that if that individual were to come into the building, that their first interaction would be with my staff before they got to me. And so it was very important to me to be transparent with my staff about the types of threats that I had received. And so we held, a team meeting to go over playing the threats for them so that they could hear them themselves, and sharing them with them, because I wanted them to be fully aware and not just a veiled, explanation of what was happening, because I understood that their safety was at risk here too. And so we talked that through as far as like, what did that mean for them? How did they feel about that? Did they feel unsafe in the office? We had one of our sheriff's deputies come in and talk to the staff also. At that time, maybe one of the positives that came out of the pandemic during this time in receiving threats is that the building was locked down to the public except for appointment. So that actually was beneficial in this type of a situation where you have election officials receiving threats, and the building, you could only get into the building if you had an appointment. So we knew who was coming in, what time they were coming in, and what business they were coming in to conduct. And so that was a really good filter for us. We also had, the sheriff's office had a staged vehicle out in the parking lot for a while, also had more of a consistent presence in the building than what we would normally have. And so we were just taking all the precautions that we could without being paranoid, but also being prepared. Rochester Hills had already done like a threat risk assessment anyway, looking at security in the building. It was something that we were already having conversations about. Just in general, because of the way the building is set up there, it's very open to the public. So this was just one more thing that got added to the conversation of how would we react in this type of a situation? What can we do to make things more secure here? So that was pretty much what we were doing in the city.
Great, great. I'm so sorry to hear about this. You talked about how it affected your staff, but when individuals are threatened, it impacts more than just that person. It affects their family. Threats can bring fear and uncertainty. Would you share with us how this impacted your family and how you dealt with this?
Yeah, I mean, this is not a conversation, and I'll try to get through this question and not be too emotional, but it's been over a year and I still feel emotional about it. So this is not a conversation you ever expect to have with your family. You don't ever expect to sit down with them and say, someone is threatening to take a knife to my throat in public. You don't ever expect to have that conversation that they say that when I least expect it, that's when they're going to kill me. And so to have that conversation just in general is extremely emotional. To have it with your parents, I'm somebody's daughter, I'm somebody's mother. To have that with my kids and my spouse, my husband, to have those conversations and say, my safety is at risk, which means their safety is at risk too, just like my staff, because at any point they could be with me if someone decided to carry out, a bad act of some sort. And so you needed to have that conversation with them about awareness, and things that they could do to make sure that they were being safe. We quit checking in all the places on social media, if you will, and doing things like that, sharing where we were going to be during that time, and just being extremely cautious about the steps that we were taking. We also, just like, doing a risk assessment in the office, we also did a risk assessment at home. I'm fortunate that my husband is a sheriff's deputy, so I have someone who lives here 24/7 that is already trained, but was able to take a look at the house and say, what do we need to do to make sure that we're more secure here in the house? Looking at things too that you do that's like habitual, as far as like, do you always take the same route? Do you always go to the same places? And having those conversations with your family, it's extremely emotional to do that. It's also, like you said, it brings in an element of fear, something that maybe would not have gotten your attention before, might trigger an emotion in you now that would not have been triggered, a year prior to that. And so recognizing that it changes the way that you think, it changes your reaction to things. And I think it makes you be more guarded in all of your actions and in everything that you say and do.
How did you share this information and ideas with other election officials in your state to address some of these issues?
Yeah, so here I was like a city clerk here in Michigan. So here in Michigan, the clerks have a Michigan Facebook forum for Michigan clerks. And so that's a closed Facebook group that we can actually, talk back and forth with each other and share ideas and talk about these emotions from the 2020 election. Because even though an election official didn't have to have an actual death threat to have felt threatened, there are a lot of heated conversations that have taken place over the last year and a half when it comes to things that are election related. Sharing scenarios and maybe how they diffused those situations in order to get that person to understand what the real truth was. And so in sharing our stories with each other, that has been incredibly helpful. I also, there are some small groups of clerks that have kind of created their own help groups, if you will, that are sharing information with each other, that are also, talking through the emotions of situations with each other and what they're doing. And so clerks are incredibly close knit. And so we're a group that I think is really unique in the way that we network with each other. For a lot of us, it's not just professionally, but a lot of us also network with each other personally. And so I think knowing your village, sharing that information with them sharing with you, and all of us just looking out for each other, I think is really the way that we can best approach all of this.
What resources would be helpful to local election officials as you work in this new and evolving threat landscape?
Yeah, so as I kind of wanted to look back as to how I felt right after I got the first death threat and what my emotions were and what my thoughts were. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is, who am I supposed to report this to? Am I supposed to tell my local authority? So I think there's, first of all, the question of, who do I tell about this? And so I think, people are looking for, am I supposed to go straight to my local authorities? Do I go to the FBI? Do I go to DOJ? So there seems to be some uncertainty as to who the contact person is for that type of a threat, because it isn't a conversation we've ever had before prior to this last year. I think also in looking at this too, we were looking at not only the who do we report it to, but what do we do with the evidence? Like, am I supposed to keep that? And I can tell you, I've been working with an FBI agent, even still right now, regarding my death threats that I received. And he stated to me that one of the problems that they've had is that people didn't retain all of the evidence because they didn't know they were supposed to. And so I think that that is, something too, that we need to know what type of evidence should we be keeping? What should we be documenting? Like what day it came in, what time it came in, what did it come in on? Did it come in through your email? Did it come in through your voicemail? Did it come in through your social media? So those are things that we aren't used to doing either. And how do you talk to your staff? Like, how do you have that conversation with your staff and your family? What should you be going over with them of what you can do to be proactive and also be protective at the, all at the same time? So how do you have those conversations? Maybe some guidance along there. And then again, how to maybe some training in how to diffuse situations like that, because a lot of people, by the time they get to the local official, whether it's election official or just a local public servant, they're already at a very heightened emotional state before they even come into the building. They've worked themselves up before they get there if there's something that they're angry about or something that they're upset about. And so how do you diffuse those types of situations, and how can you talk down someone who is already coming in with a high anger level? And then the ability to share truth and provide transparency. And when I say that, I mean, how do we use like social media? How do we use news media outlets to get truth out and to show the public, this is where this type of event happens. This is how you can come see this in person. And so better ways that we can do that, so that I think the elections process itself is transparent. I just don't think that a lot of people understand where the transparency is happening and how they can be a part of it. And so I think if we can better share those truths and share that knowledge with the public, that it arms us to be better election officials and maybe help diffuse those situations before they start.
Great. Do you have any advice for election officials who themselves are facing threats or harassment?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for you that this is happening, and that you need to take it seriously. You need to look at this and understand this is someone who is angry. This is someone who is probably maybe even having some mental stability issues. And so you should take threats seriously, because you don't know where they're coming from and what their state of mind is when they're making those threats. So take the threat seriously. Make sure that you report it. Already have relationships with your local law enforcement. So in a situation like this, that you're having a conversation with someone that you already know, talk to them about the fact that this is happening across the country. Maybe it hasn't happened to you yet, but if it does happen, what would they like for you to do, and how will that conversation take place? I would encourage them to do threat assessments in their office if they haven't done that yet, as well as their homes. How can they protect themselves? To look at that, to be proactive about it. And if you have received threats, I want to strongly encourage you to talk about your feelings with people that you trust. Talk about how you feel. Talk about the fear that you might feel, the anger that you might feel, all of those things. It's very healthy to talk about this. I also think that unless you have been in that situation, maybe that a person doesn't fully understand. And if there is an election official out there who has been threatened, who is feeling like they don't have someone who understands, I share my contact. I'm there. I'm willing to have conversations with you, but surround yourself with a village of people that are not only going to protect you physically, but also mentally and emotionally during this time. And I think, just taking those proactive measures, I think at some point, in some way, whether it be a physical threat or not, it comes knocking on all of our doors right now in the elections community. And we have to bind together, and we have to combine our resources to be the best that we can be together to protect each other.
Well, I want to thank you for your 30+ years of service to Rochester Hills and Oakland County and Michigan itself. And more importantly now, the service that you've done to this nation, or for this nation. I'm sorry that these things have occurred. And I hope that this video will help at least 1 or 2 people so that they don't have to endure the ridiculousness that you had to. So again, thank you for joining me here today. I know Rochester Hills and Oakland County well, and I think that you've done a great job there, and I'm glad that you're here at the EAC now. So thank you again, and I think that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Hicks. I appreciate that.